The ability for healthcare providers to seamlessly share data is becoming more and more important. But before that can happen, there needs to be a set of standards that allows that data to be exchanged and interpreted correctly. FHIR, which stands for Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resource, has quickly become a popular resource used for joining systems together so they can properly exchange information. And FHIR has just released a new update. Here to tell us all about it is Jocelyn Keegan. She's a senior health information technology consultant at Point of Care Partners, and she's also the project manager for the Vinci Project. Jocelyn recently wrote an article called What Version 4 of FHIR Standard Means for Adoption and Innovation, which is available on our blog. Jocelyn, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Sunny. Great to be here.
Jocelyn, FHIR came on the scene about 7 years ago, and already 1/3 of certified health IT vendors are using it. Why do you think it's gained so much momentum?
Well, there's a little bit of historical perspective there. One of the ways that the industry met the demands of meaningful use was for the EHR vendors to settle on one API and one format to be able to get a minimal set of data out of the EHRs as part of meaningful use requirements. And so FHIR was selected at that point in time and supported by a program called the Argonaut. I think as we start talking about the ability for the industry to be able to support extensibility, larger data sets, more different transaction types, it's incredibly important to be able to build on those foundations. And there's a lot of activity in the industry today to show that traction is happening and the momentum is underway. What's important to understand when you're talking about something like FHIR is the ability for there to be a consistent API and application programming interface for any party to be able to understand that there's a standard way and a predefined way to set up that API so that it can talk to anyone in a consistent format. And the power that comes along with that and the move away from more sort of kitchen sink, everything that you need, application programming interfaces that require a lot of expertise to be able to understand and to be able to write to something that's more based on modern standards, is more flexible, and can be constrained and defined around specific, more nuanced use cases is incredibly powerful for the healthcare industry to be able to use and leverage to be able to get to further along in this interoperability path that we're on.
Release 4 of FHIR just came out in January, and it's already expected to accelerate and increase overall adoption. Is it ready for broad stream adoption? What do you think?
I think it's really interesting because like you said, I think that there are folks that have been watching and tracking it in the industry. ONC has been tracking adoption over the last few years. I'd say that there were folks that were sort of waiting for the R4, the normative standard to happen. And now that we're there, I think that that's gotten more people interested and engaged, that they view that it's more fully baked. But candidly, people have been using and leveraging FHIR both inside their own internal systems and in emerging APIs between trading partners really for a couple of years now in the market. So this is a big move forward because it means that people will need to rewrite their code less frequently. But we're seeing in things like the Vinci Project, this being really a mark for people to start to participate, to start to place their bets on where the first places are that they're going to use FHIR. And then in addition, since the January normative announcement, ONC and CMS both released NPRMs that called out or referenced FHIR in a very significant way. Really any place where they were mentioning an API being needed. And in addition, some of the work that we've been able to do on Vinci was referenced from CMS because they've been one of our partners in getting some of the initial APIs out into the market around payer to provider transactions related to the steps before prior authorization is required.
So I heard you mentioned ONC, CMS. Let's talk about the impact of how much FHIR is referenced in the recent notice for public rulemaking by ONC and CMS.
So I think what's important is now that we are at a normative version and each of the participants in the market are really developing their plans on when that normative version is going to be available out in the market to their customer base, whether it be an EHR, an IT vendor, a payer or provider standing them up, is that we're really shifting, I think, from the move of sort of building the base that is FHIR and really starting to leverage the power of this really flexible standard to be able to do things like constrain it to build specific implementation guides and reference implementations for a specific use case or set of use cases. And that's part of what we're seeing in the work that we're doing with Da Vinci, is finding a community of people to be able to come together and then be recognized that work that's underway could be more broadly used by the market, and be able to bring that into the standards development process and be able to get those assets out to the market to be able to be leveraged by a larger group of participants.
More than 3,000 edits and updates were made to this most recent version of FHIR. What would you say, Jocelyn, are some of the big takeaways?
So, I think that if you look at the sort of the work that's gone into, and it's funny, I was just doing an email dialogue with some of the folks that I think are seen as really the forefathers of FHIR around sort of, is there any way to quantify the amount of effort that went in to the release? And it's the sort of the response that I got back was that it's really sort of unvaluable, right? Because there's so many individuals, so many different organizations that have gone into the work at hand to get the standard to where it is. And it's still early. There's still work to be done, but the work that's being done now is really around how you're using it in a specific place for a specific purpose. And we're really reaping the benefits of all those thousands of hours of connect-a-thons and people building implementation guides and real use out in the market of the current standard.
Jocelyn, what's the overall goal with this new release? What kind of impact could this potentially have?
Well, I really think at the core, we're really talking about FHIR becoming a fundamental building block of the way that we're going to progress forward with interoperability from a marketplace. And I think one of the things that's important to note there is that it really is about, not necessarily it being additive to the current situation, not necessarily replacing existing standards, but there's a number of places where there's just friction or data doesn't flow or there are blockers to getting information. So being able to do this sort of specific use for a specific purpose at a resource level, I think really makes FHIR really a powerful tool for payers and providers and other participants in the market to be able to do things at scale that they never would have been able to do in a more traditional EDI setting.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for your insight today. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks. Great to be here.
We've only scratched the surface of FHIR and the big changes coming with version 4. If you guys would like more information, be sure to check out Jocelyn's full article on our website at POCP.com. And of course, you can always reach out to us if you'd like more information.